Imagine hitting rock bottom. The rent is late, the bank account is dry, and the city's concrete heart feels colder than ever. That was the life of Camilla Drake, a waitress with a dream bigger than her debt, holding on to her very last $10 bill, her only lifeline for the next 24 hours. But one rainy Manhattan night, a chance encounter with a broken, seemingly destitute man in her section forced her to make an impossible choice. He was asking for a handout. She had nothing left to give. Little did she know, this wasn't just any desperate soul. It was Brody West, the famously ruthless CEO of West Corp Global, running the most intricate, high-stakes integrity test of his career. That small, selfless act of charity would trigger an avalanche of events involving 50 of the world's most powerful millionaires, changing her life forever, and exposing a corporate secret that could ruin them all. The rain hitting the awning of The Gilded Spoon sounded like a drum roll signaling a tragedy. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of French butter, old money, and desperation, mostly Camilla Drake's. At 24, Camilla had the kind of fierce, unwavering ambition that big cities chewed up and spit out. She carried herself with the sharp, kinetic energy of someone perpetually running out of time. Her actual work, waitressing at this ridiculously expensive Upper East Side establishment, was a necessary humiliation. Her real life, the one that existed in the stolen hours between 1 a.m. and 6 a.m., was spent coding a revolutionary supply chain logistics application she called Nexus, designed to eliminate global food waste. She was close to a prototype, but the server fees, the coding tutorials, and the sheer cost of surviving in New York had bled her dry. Tonight, Tuesday, October 17th, was not just bad. It was catastrophic. She checked the tiny, worn leather pouch she kept tucked deep in her apron pocket. Her fingers counted the bills: a crumpled 5, 4 singles, and a 50-cent piece. No, wait. The singles were actually a single $10 bill, carefully folded, separated from the rest. Her total life savings, until her next paycheck cleared in 3 days, was $10.50. The $10 wasn't just cash. It was a promise. It was the 2 Subway swipes and a bodega coffee that would fuel her 48 hours of intense coding work after her shift. Without it, she'd walk the 5 miles back to her cramped 4th-floor walk-up in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and starve until Friday. Camilla, 7B needs an emergency decaf espresso stat. And for the love of God, smile, hissed Marcus, the shift manager, a man whose permanent scowl suggested he chewed on broken promises for breakfast. Camilla plastered the required brittle smile on her face and hurried to the bar. Her mind was racing on the geometry of empty pockets. $10.50, bus fare is $2.90, coffee is $4.50, total $7.40. That leaves $3.10 for food. She needed fuel for the Nexus coding marathon. She had been subsisting on ramen for 2 weeks. She approached table 7B, a woman named Mrs. Petroff, dripping in inherited diamonds and complaining about the truffle oil being too earthy, sighed dramatically. "And tell the chef the sea bass is entirely too moist. It's unprofessional," Mrs. Petroff declared, not looking up from her phone. "Of course, Mrs. Petroff. My sincere apologies for the excessive moisture," Camilla replied, her tone a perfect, polished blend of servility and false concern. As she cleared the plates, her eyes drifted to table 12, tucked away in the dimly lit back corner. It had been unoccupied all evening, reserved for a last-minute VIP, or so Marcus claimed. Just after 11:30 p.m., as the final dinner rush dwindled, a man entered. He was tall, mid-40s, impeccably dressed in a bespoke Italian suit, but there was a devastating quality to his appearance. His face, usually sharp and commanding, was softened by exhaustion and a sheen of sweat. He didn't carry the usual aristocratic arrogance of the clientele. He looked lost. Marcus rushed over, but the man waved him off. a gesture of weary finality. "Just the corner table, please. I won't need a menu, just a glass of water." Camilla watched him sit at table 12. His posture was rigid, his gaze fixed on the mahogany tabletop, his expensive leather briefcase resting untouched beside him. She recognized him instantly, a fact that sent a shockwave through her already frayed nerves. It was Brody West. Brody West. The name was synonymous with modern American power. Founder and CEO of West Corp Global, a titan whose influence spanned tech, finance, and renewable energy. He was routinely on the cover of Forbes and Time. He was the kind of man who moved markets with a single, cryptic tweet. What was he doing here, alone, looking like the world had just ended? Camilla was assigned his table. She approached slowly, her professional mask firmly in place. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Gilded Spoon. Can I start you off with anything? Perhaps a glass of our reserve Cabernet?" she offered, her voice steady. Brody West lifted his head. His eyes, usually described in business profiles as glacial blue, were now clouded with a raw, unsettling vulnerability. He didn't look at her. He looked through her. "Thank you. No. Just the water is fine. Still, if you please," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. Camilla returned with the water. The silence at the table was oppressive. She stood back, waiting for the inevitable demand for service. 10 minutes passed. The entire restaurant felt the shift in atmosphere caused by the CEO's presence, yet he ordered nothing. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely a whisper, forcing Camilla to lean in. I apologize for taking up your table," Brody began, his shoulders slumping slightly. He reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket and then his trousers, a slow, agonizing search. He looked genuinely panicked. "This is going to sound ridiculous, but I was running from a meeting, a very bad one, and somewhere between the town car and the lobby, I realized my wallet, phone, everything is gone. Completely. I have no key, no access to my accounts, nothing. I'm locked out of my entire digital life." He looked directly at Camilla for the first time. The desperation in his eyes wasn't the polished corporate kind. It was elemental, the fear of a powerful man stripped bare. "I only need enough for a taxi ride home, just enough to get me to my security detail. I promise I will pay you back tenfold. I need $10. I swear to you, I will make it worth your time." Camilla felt a strange, cold flutter in her chest. She looked at the man, the CEO who could buy the restaurant and everyone in it 100 times over, begging for $10. He looked utterly credible in his distress. His expensive suit was a cruel mockery of his current state. $10. Her subway rides, her food, her connection to her coding life. A cynical voice, Marcus's voice, the voice of the city, screamed in her mind. "It's a scam. He's testing you. He's rich. He'll be fine. Don't be a fool." But then, the other voice, the one that had her meticulously logging data for the Nexus project to save hungry people, spoke. It was the voice of empathy, the voice that knew what true hunger felt like. Even a CEO, stripped of his digital armor, was just a man caught in the rain. She took a deep breath, tasting the irony of the situation. The waitress, scraping by, was about to bankroll the world's most successful financier. She reached into her apron, pulled out the worn leather pouch, and extracted the carefully folded $10 bill. It felt like tearing a piece of her own skin. "Sir," she said, her voice clear and without a hint of judgment. "Please, take it. You look like you need it more than I do right now." She pressed the bill into his hand. His fingers, which had signed billions of dollars worth of contracts, trembled slightly as they closed around the paper. Brody West looked at the bill, then up at Camilla, his expression unreadable. You don't even know my name," "I know what desperation looks like, Mr. West," she replied, a faint, almost rebellious smile touching her lips. "Please just get home safe." He stared at her for a long, silent moment. The moment stretched, weighty and momentous, before he finally nodded, pushing himself up from the table. "Thank you, Camilla Drake," he said, startling her by using her full name, reading it off her name tag. His voice was firm now, the rasp gone. "You have no idea what you've just done." He walked out the door and disappeared into the New York rain, leaving behind the chilling implication that she had either just solved his problem or created her own. Camilla stood frozen, her apron pocket feeling impossibly light, the rain's drumroll growing louder in the sudden, terrifying silence. She had $0.50 left. She had to walk home. 1 hour later, in a minimalist, glass-walled office high above Midtown, the rain-slicked city stretched out beneath two people who had witnessed the entire, tiny transaction. Gavin Cross, Brody West's chief operating officer and longtime friend, a man whose face was etched with the permanent stress of managing a multi-billion-dollar empire, watched the playback of the encounter on a massive 4K monitor. He was lean, sharp, and wore an expression of perpetual skeptical amusement. $10, Gavin muttered, running a hand through his dark, close-cropped hair. "Brody, that was theatrical, even for you. Did you really need to put on the Oscar-winning performance of the destitute tycoon?" Across the room, seated in a pristine white leather chair, was Margot Brooks. If Brody West was known for brute financial force, Margot was known for quiet, almost surgical philanthropy. She was a major investor in ethical tech and sustainable projects, with connections to nearly every major charitable trust and venture capital fund in the city. She was impeccably tailored, her silver hair pulled back in a severe knot, and her expression was one of intense, calculating neutrality. "It wasn't theater, Gavin. It was data," Margot corrected, her voice low and resonant. She was drinking chamomile tea, the only non-alcoholic beverage in the room. Brody needed authenticity for Project Chimera. He needed an unvarnished response to an authentic display of weakness. And he got it. The waitress, Camilla Drake, is a variable of high interest. Brody West himself was back in his office, completely dry and composed, the image of desperation gone. He wasn't distraught. He was, as always, deeply calculating. He was holding a small silver tracking device disguised as a key ring. The lost wallet and phone were resting safely in his desk drawer. "She looked me in the eye, Gavin," Brody said, his voice flat, his hands steepled under his chin. "She knew exactly who I was. The name tag gave her mine, but I could tell she recognized me from the media, yet she didn't try to leverage it. No, oh, Mr. West, let me get you a 20. Just sign this NDA first." No demands for a job interview, just pure, unadulterated empathy. Gavin scrolled through the digital file containing Camilla's background check, which Westcorp's private security detail had completed within the hour. Camilla Drake, 24, graduated NYU Poly with a degree in industrial design, top 5% of her class, deferred paying her student loans for 2 years, current address, 4th floor walk-up, Greenpoint, works at the Gilded Spoon, averaging 70 hours a week. Bank account balance as of 11:37 p.m. tonight, $0.50. Gavin whistled softly. "She gave you her last dime, Brody, literally." "Precisely," Brody affirmed, a flicker of something akin to satisfaction crossing his face. "That $10 was crucial to her survival, and she risked it on the off chance I was telling the truth. That is integrity. That is the kind of scarcity-driven altruism that is nearly extinct in our world." Project Chimera was Brody's obsession. For months, he had been arguing with his board and his elite social circle, the very 50 millionaires the user had referred to, that their charitable efforts were meaningless without genuine human connection and true vetting. They were throwing millions at large institutions, but Brody believed real impact came from investing in the integrity of individuals with great potential but zero resources. The $10 test was the crucible. "So, what's the protocol?" Gavin asked, closing the file. "A $50,000 check? A scholarship? A simple thank you?" Margot finally spoke, leaning forward, her eyes sharp. "No, the test is not complete. We need to see her ambition, her resilience, and her authenticity under a different kind of pressure. We need to see nexus." Brody nodded, a slow, deliberate movement. She mentioned the food waste project briefly in her waitressing application bio, something about using technology to fix broken logistics. "We need the full dossier on this Nexus application. If it's half as intelligent as she is empathetic, we have our keystone." "And the rest of the 50? Gavin pressed. The 50 were the members of the highly exclusive Altruism Accord, a pact of ultra-wealthy individuals Brody had convinced to set aside $100 million for this experimental, disruptive philanthropic venture. They were skeptics, most of them, seeing this as a ridiculous publicity stunt. "They will convene tomorrow afternoon, as scheduled," Brody announced, a cold, calculating intensity returning to his voice. "I told them I would present the first investment opportunity for the Accord. I didn't tell them it would be a waitress. Gavin, I want her here, in this building, tomorrow at 3 p.m. No lies. Tell her the truth, or a close approximation of it. Tell her I owe her more than money." Gavin raised an eyebrow. "And how do you plan to lure a 24-year-old with $0.50 in her bank account to your lair without looking like a Bond villain?" "She doesn't need to be lured," Brody said, a faint, almost predatory smile appearing. "She needs to be found. And she needs to realize that the $10 she gave away was the single most valuable investment she ever made. Call the Gilded Spoon. Offer her a consultancy fee, say $5,000, for a 1-hour meeting. That's enough to get her attention and cover her rent." Margot stood up, adjusting her tailored jacket. "I like it, Brody. You stripped her of her security and she responded with grace. Now let's see what she does when you give her a fraction of the security she deserves. I want a seat in that meeting. I want to see how she pitches Nexus." Brody watched her leave, then turned to Gavin. "I want eyes on her all night, Gavin. Make sure she's safe getting home. And tomorrow, I want her to walk into that boardroom with the same humility she showed tonight. Get the Nexus profile ready. It's time to convince 50 millionaires they need to bet on a dime store angel." Gavin, already typing furiously on his tablet, paused. "You're putting a lot of faith in one woman, Brody. What if she cracks under the pressure?" Brody West merely shrugged, his eyes distant, focused on the rain washing the glass. "Then we lose $10. But if she doesn't, if she's the one, then we change everything. Now make the call." Camilla Drake walked the 5 miles home. The rain was relentless, soaking through her thin coat, but she barely noticed the cold. The exhaustion was a heavy cloak, but the fear was a tiny, sharp needle, constantly pricking her conscience. She had $0.20. The rent was due in 2 days. She was facing certain financial ruin. "You idiot, Camilla," she chastised herself, stumbling slightly as she crossed an empty street. "You gave your escape route to a man whose tailored suit probably cost more than your student debt. He was testing you, and you failed the test of self-preservation." Yet, beneath the acidic self-criticism, a small, stubborn ember of warmth glowed. She had done the right thing. Seeing the raw fear in Brody West's eyes had resonated with her own deep-seated terror of powerlessness. She couldn't, in good conscience, have turned away a man who looked that desperate, regardless of his status. She finally reached her apartment building, a brick monstrosity with peeling paint. Climbing the 4 flights of stairs felt like scaling Mount Everest. Inside her tiny, frigid studio, the first thing she did was peel off her drenched clothes and wrap herself in her thickest blanket. She sat down at her makeshift desk, a slab of plywood resting on 2 milk crates. The glow of her laptop was her only comfort. She knew she had to code. She had to finish the core algorithm for Nexus. If she could just get the prototype operational, she could maybe get it into the hands of a small venture capital firm, any firm, before she was evicted. For the next 4 hours, she lost herself in the logic of her program. Nexus wasn't just an app. It was a systemic solution. It used predictive analytics and decentralized ledger technology to match surplus food supply, farm, factory, restaurant, with immediate demand, food banks, shelters, in real time, minimizing logistics costs and maximizing distribution speed. It was the future of charity, built on the premise that efficiency and empathy could coexist. At 4 a.m., the coding stopped abruptly. A message popped up on her laptop screen. It was an email sent to her personal account. Subject: Urgent. Follow-up regarding the Gilded Spoon. October 17th. The sender was an unlisted address, gavin.crosswestcorpglobal.com. Camilla stared at the email, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She was too tired, too raw, to deal with a corporate legal threat. She opened it. The content was formal, yet startlingly direct. Dear Ms. Drake, I am Gavin Cross, Chief Operating Officer for Westcorp Global, reporting directly to Mr. Brody West. I am writing regarding your interaction with Mr. West at the Gilded Spoon late last night. Mr. West has asked me to extend his profound gratitude and, more immediately, to settle his debt in a manner commensurate with the service you provided. Mr. West wishes to meet with you immediately. We understand your current work schedule, so we are proposing a 1-hour consultancy meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, October 18th, at 3 p.m. at Westcorp Global Headquarters, 124 de West Plaza, 55th floor, Manhattan. For your time and the inconvenience this may cause, we will immediately process a consulting fee of $5,000. Zomo payable by wire transfer to your account before the meeting or by certified check upon arrival. Please confirm your availability. This is not a request for employment, but an opportunity to discuss a matter of mutual interest. Gavin Cross, COO, Westcorp Global. P.S. We sincerely apologize for the lack of notice. We look forward to hearing from you. Camilla read the email 3 times. Then she checked the date. It was Wednesday, October 18th, 4:05 a.m. It wasn't a dream. $5,000. That was 2 months' rent. That was the server fees for Nexus for a year. That was salvation. She felt a wave of dizziness. She was being tested again, but this time the stakes were even higher. Why a consultancy fee? Why the urgent meeting? And what was the matter of mutual interest? Brody West had seen the name tag. Had he also seen the spark in her eye? The ambition that pulsed beneath the surface of her professional smile? She typed a reply, her fingers shaking slightly. Mr. Cross, I acknowledge receipt of your email. I am available to meet with Mr. West today, October 18th, at 3 p.m. at the Westcorp Global Headquarters. I accept the $5,000 fee, payable by certified check upon arrival. I look forward to our discussion. Sincerely, Camilla Drake. She sent the email and collapsed into her bed, the cold fear replaced by a strange, thrilling nausea. Her last $10 had vanished, but the universe had just repaid her 500-fold. But she couldn't shake Brody West's parting words. You have no idea what you've just done. It felt less like a thank you and more like a declaration of war. Camilla woke up at 7 a.m., feeling less rested than when she'd collapsed. Her studio apartment, usually a haven of quiet dedication, now felt like a pressurized chamber. The email from Gavin Cross sat open on her laptop screen, a $5,000 promise shimmering in digital ink. She immediately emailed her manager, Marcus, at the Gilded Spoon, requesting the rest of the day off, citing an unforeseen medical emergency. She received a terse, two-word reply: "Be better." Marcus was the least of her concerns. The immediate relief of the $5,000, even unsecured, was overwhelming. It lifted the literal weight of her eviction notice and her student loan interest, a financial gravity that had been crushing her for years. She had been operating on pure, draining anxiety. For the first time, she had space to breathe. But the urgency of the 3 p.m. meeting now created a new, terrifying kind of pressure. Brody West hadn't invited her to talk about the $10. He had invited her to talk about the matter of mutual interest. That interest could only be Nexus. Camilla leaped into a frenzy of preparation. She pulled up the raw data logs and code repositories for Nexus. She needed to articulate a massive, complex, and potentially world-changing algorithm into a concise, compelling pitch. A narrative that wouldn't just impress, but demand attention. Nexus was fundamentally simple. It minimized entropy in the food distribution system. She had modeled her logic on the speed of flash trading, applying it to perishables. She practiced her elevator pitch out loud to her reflection in the bathroom mirror, her voice cracking with fear and lack of sleep. Nexus is a decentralized ledger application designed to address the $1.2 trillion global food waste problem. We use predictive AI to forecast micro-demand fluctuations and reroute surplus inventory in real time. We don't just donate food, we eliminate the logistical lag that causes spoilage, treating wasted resources like the market inefficiency it is. It sounded good, but was it good enough for Brody West, the man who spoke the language of billions? A second, more immediate crisis emerged: clothing. Her wardrobe consisted of thrift store finds, worn coding t-shirts, and 2 sets of her waitress uniform. The only thing remotely professional was a simple black sheath dress she'd bought on sale for a friend's graduation. It was cheap, slightly wrinkled, but clean. It was, however, far from the power attire she imagined Westcorp executives wore. She considered spending a small portion of the promised $5,000 on a new suit, but the fundamental lessons of her poverty held firm. Do not spend money you don't yet have. She ironed the black dress meticulously, borrowing a steamer from a neighbor and patching a small tear near the hem with a steady hand. At 1:30 p.m., she received a text message on her aging, cracked phone. It was from an anonymous number. Text message: Ms. Drake, your $5,000 consultancy fee has been wired to the checking account on file from your Gilded Spoon application. Please check your bank statement. Use the money for a car service to 1 West Plaza. The rain is starting again. See you soon. GC Camilla pulled up her banking app. There it was. The balance, which had read $0.50 this morning, now read $5,050. It was a jolt of surreal validation. Brody West, the man she helped, kept his word, and he had done it immediately. She stood in front of the mirror, looking at the reflection of Camilla Drake, the waitress in the slightly too tight black dress, clutching her worn laptop bag. The sudden security, the immediate payoff, was the real test. Did she still feel the fire? Or would the $5,000 dull her hunger? She felt the fire, but it was now tempered with a new, dangerous understanding. Brody West didn't just repay debts. He was orchestrating a meticulously controlled environment. He knew her background, her bank balance, and now he knew about her project. The $10 had bought him access to her life, and she needed to be prepared to defend it. Taking a deep breath, Camilla squared her shoulders. She didn't call a car service. She took the subway, the $2.90 subway ride she had nearly starved for, and saved the rest of the $5,000 for her servers. The integrity test, she realized, was still ongoing. The Westcorp Global Headquarters, Fort West Plaza, was a monument to modern finance, a sleek spire of smoked glass and polished chrome that seemed to scrape the sky. Camilla stepped out of the subway station at 53rd Street and instantly felt the vast chasm between her life and this world. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and silent efficiency. Security guards in tailored gray suits moved like shadows. When she approached the reception desk, the young woman, perfectly manicured and wearing a headset that suggested she communicated directly with the financial cosmos, smiled without warmth. "Camilla Drake, 3 p.m. I'm expected by Mr. Cross." The receptionist didn't need to check a list. "Of course, Ms. Drake. The 55th floor. Mr. Cross is waiting." As she ascended in the private express elevator, the glass walls offered a dizzying panorama of the city. The entire journey was designed to intimidate, to place the visitor in a dizzying perspective of insignificance. Camilla clenched her laptop bag, grounding herself with the weight of the code inside. The 55th floor was silence personified. It was all pale oak, minimalist art, and views that stretched to the horizon. Gavin Cross, COO, was waiting for her in the reception area. He was exactly as she remembered him from the magazine photos. Sharp, tired, and dressed in a suit that looked like it had been molded around his frame. "Ms. Drake, thank you for coming. And thank you, again, for your kindness last night," Gavin said, offering a hand that felt unexpectedly warm. "Thank you, Mr. Cross, for the immediate payment." "It was unexpected," Camilla replied, keeping her voice level. Gavin smiled, a genuinely amused curve of his lips. "Brody West is many things, but a deadbeat is not one of them. Come with me. We have about 15 minutes before the meeting." He led her not to Brody's private office, but to a small, dark lounge with plush seating. "Let's be direct, Camilla. Brody isn't interested in your waitressing skills," Gavin began, setting 2 bottles of sparkling water on a low table. "He is interested in Nexus. We have run a deep dive analysis on your code, the portions you publicly posted on GitHub, your academic papers from NYU. We know it's brilliant. We know it works." Camilla felt a flush of shock and anger. You hacked my profile? My project is private." "No hacking, Ms. Drake. Just publicly available data that you tied to your professional identity. When you handed Brody West $10, you inadvertently purchased a massive corporate background check, including an intellectual property assessment," Gavin clarified smoothly. "You have genius-level IP, 0 security, and a bank balance of $5,050. Brody sees a vulnerability and a solution, all in one package." He paused, letting the information sink in. "Now for the part I'm genuinely sorry about." Gavin leaned in conspiratorially. "Brody hasn't called this meeting just for you and him. Today is the quarterly gathering of the Altruism Accord. 50 of the world's wealthiest individuals, all signatories to a $100 million experimental fund. Brody convinced them to pool resources to invest disruptively in projects that merge profit and purpose." Camilla's breath hitched. 50 millionaires. 50 billionaires and centimillionaires, Gavin corrected gently. "They are waiting for Brody's first proposal. They are skeptical, ruthless, and bored. Brody West is about to walk you into that room and tell them that his $10 test resulted in finding the first viable investment for their $100 million fund, Nexus." The room seemed to spin. Camilla wasn't just here to talk to a CEO. She was being presented as a sacrificial lamb, an object lesson, and a proof of concept, all at once. "You're telling me that in 5 minutes I have to pitch my life's work to 50 investors who are predisposed to hate anything that didn't come from Harvard Business School?" she managed, her voice dangerously thin. Gavin nodded. "Essentially, yes. Brody's strategy is simple. The man who could buy this city was humbled by your genuine kindness, proving that integrity exists. Now, he wants you to prove that genuine integrity can also generate genuine disruptive wealth. Your integrity got you the meeting, Camilla. Your genius has to get you the funding. He rose, indicating it was time to leave the sanctuary of the lounge. Brody has given them a presentation detailing the Nexus algorithm. They have the hard numbers. What they need now is the Camilla Drake factor. Don't try to be one of them. Be the 24-year-old coding out of her Greenpoint walk-up, fueled by desperation and a vision. Be authentic. It's the only asset they can't buy. The revelation was a hammer blow, but it also crystallized her focus. This wasn't a job interview. It was a battle. She had nothing left to lose. Brody West had put her in the arena, and now she had to fight. The boardroom on the 55th floor was vast and terrifying. It was designed in a severe U-shape, dominated by a single polished slab of dark granite. 50 chairs were occupied by 50 individuals, a collective concentration of wealth and power that made the air feel thin and electrified. Brody West stood at the head of the table, looking every inch the corporate god. When Camilla was ushered in by Gavin, the room fell into a heavy, judgmental silence. She felt 100 eyes, sharp and dismissive, rake over her cheap black dress and her worn laptop bag. She spotted Margot Brooks sitting near the center, the only face that offered a fleeting, non-committal nod of acknowledgement. The others were a sea of tailored suits, designer glasses, and expressions ranging from open contempt to utter boredom. Brody smiled, a rare, chilling display that didn't reach his eyes. Ladies and gentlemen of the Altruism Accord, thank you for your patience. I know many of you view Project Chimera as an indulgence. You prefer to write checks to familiar institutions. I believe, however, that true philanthropic disruption requires seeking out the purest forms of integrity and ambition. I promised you the first viable investment opportunity to justify the Accord's existence. Meet Camilla Drake. He gestured toward her. The silence deepened. Camilla, Brody continued, his voice echoing in the large room, is a waitress. Until last night, her net worth was precisely $1050. She used $10 of that, her rent and food money, to help a stranger in distress. That stranger was me. Her selfless act of integrity is the foundation of her presentation today. A snort erupted from a man in the front row. Mr. Vernon Hale, a notorious old guard financier. Brody, are we here for a sentimental morality play or a due diligence review? I lost $1 billion in the last quarter, and you're wasting my time with a waitress's pocket change. Brody's eyes narrowed, but his tone remained calm. Mr. Hale, the valuation of integrity is what this project is all about. Ms. Drake is not here because she was kind. She is here because her kindness proved she possesses the authenticity required to manage a global solution. Camilla, please show them Nexus. Camilla swallowed, forcing herself to focus on the granite table, not the faces. Her mind went blank. The practiced speech vanished. The pressure was a physical weight. Be authentic. Gavin's words. She dropped her laptop bag on the table with a startling thud. She didn't open her laptop. She looked at Vernon Hale. Mr. Hale, she began, her voice trembling slightly but gaining strength with every word. I didn't prepare a PowerPoint. I spent my last $10 because, for me, hunger isn't a theory. It's a reality. I walked 5 miles home in the rain because of that $10, but I didn't regret it then, and I don't regret it now. She then turned to Brody. Mr. West, I came here expecting to thank you and collect a check. Now I understand this is a test, a public humiliation wrapped in a check. But I have a better idea. She looked back at the room of 50 millionaires. You throw millions at bloated charities that spend 30% of their budget on administration. You want to eliminate global food waste, but your money moves slower than the supply chain itself. My project, Nexus, changes that. She stepped to the massive central screen and, ignoring her laptop, used a marker provided for the board. Nexus is a decentralized, blockchain-powered logistics core. It takes 3 variables: spoilage rate, SR, geographic need, GN, and resource location, RL. We use predictive AI to cross-reference them in milliseconds, automatically creating dynamic shipping routes. Current distribution takes 48 hours and costs 30 cents per pound. Nexus takes 4 hours and costs 1 cent per pound. It's not charity, gentlemen. It's efficiency. She drew 3 quick, interlinked circles on the whiteboard, labeling them. Her voice had found its rhythm, driven by the pure, infectious passion for her code. Margot Brooks leaned forward, fascinated. The decentralized ledger. Does it truly guarantee transparency? Could donors track their specific funds to specific meal deliveries? Absolutely, Ms. Brooks, Camilla responded, meeting Margot's sharp gaze. The immutable ledger provides proof of delivery, proof of consumption, and real-time impact metrics. No more opaque administrative fees. The funds move with the food. This was the first genuine interest. But then, Vernon Hale struck again. Ms. Drake, your genius-level IP is currently incomplete. Your prototype code, as posted on GitHub, which, by the way, is terribly amateur, shows a massive flaw in the SR algorithm. You fail to account for the thermal decay variable in high humidity zones. That oversight would lead to millions in spoiled deliveries. Frankly, you're an amateur who got lucky with one good act. Camilla froze. She had addressed that thermal decay bug, but she hadn't pushed the update to the public GitHub repository. It was a recent fix. How did he know? Brody West stepped forward, his face unreadable. A good point, Mr. Hale. A flaw, yes. But Ms. Drake has a solution. She mentioned it to me an hour ago. Brody was lying. He was covering for her, forcing her to improvise. The true, terrifying twist. Brody West wasn't just testing her. He was running a high-stakes corporate game to validate his vision to his peers, and he was putting her on a pedestal to do it. Camilla had 2 seconds to react. She couldn't admit the code was fixed. Hale would ask for the private repository, which she wasn't ready to share. She had to address the logic of the flaw. Mr. Hale, you are correct, Camilla said, dropping her gaze, a feigned moment of humble defeat. The thermal decay in high humidity zones is a critical variable. That is why Nexus is built to fail safe. If the predictive algorithm detects a high-risk route, it doesn't fail the delivery. It reroutes it to a hyper-local processing center for immediate canning or dehydration, reducing spoilage to 0%. The mission is zero waste, not zero risk. It was a brilliant save, pure engineering logic. Vernon Hale stared at her, his skepticism momentarily replaced by grudging respect. Brody West gave a slow, barely perceptible nod. The pitch was salvaged. But then, the final crushing blow came from the back row. A young, sleek woman, Naomi Chen, the head of a massive Silicon Valley foundation, spoke up, her voice dripping with venom. I have a question, Ms. Drake. The Altruism Accord is about authenticity. Your entire life story, as presented by Mr. West, rests on a single $10 bill. Yet, your student transcripts show you received an emergency grant from the Drake Family Foundation in 2018 to cover your first semester's tuition. Why are you presenting yourself as entirely self-made and destitute, Camilla? Who exactly are the Drakes? Camilla's blood ran cold. The Drake Family Foundation. A secret she had buried, a past she had tried to erase. Her real story was about to be exposed, potentially destroying her integrity, the very thing Brody West was betting on. Naomi Chen's question hung in the air like a poisoned dart. The silence that followed was heavier than the previous judgment. It was the sound of 50 pairs of eyes calculating the worth of a massive lie. Brody West, for the first time, looked genuinely surprised, or perhaps meticulously disappointed. Camilla felt the walls closing in, the glass citadel suddenly hostile. She could easily deny it, claim a distant relation, or dismiss it as a clerical error. But Gavin's word echoed in her memory. Be authentic. She looked directly at Naomi Chen, then at Brody West, and finally settled her gaze on Margot Brooks, who was watching with the intense neutrality of a historian observing an inflection point. Naomi Chen is correct, Camilla stated, her voice steady now, devoid of fear, tinged only with resignation. The Drake Family Foundation did pay my first semester's tuition. They are my family. My grandfather, Elias Drake, founded the company that became Global Commodities. And yes, they are one of the original families of New York's old money. A ripple of murmuring swept through the Accord members. Vernon Hale actually cracked a rare, triumphant smile. Then your narrative is a fraud, Ms. Drake, Naomi Chen pressed, leaning forward. You are not a struggling waitress fueled by desperation. You are a slumming heiress playing at poverty. Camilla finally opened her laptop, the familiar weight of the metal offering a strange comfort. She ignored the screen and spoke to the room's core cynicism. I am a waitress and a coder. I haven't spoken to my family in 5 years. And I am not a fraud, Ms. Chen, because I am defined by the choices I make, not the family I fled. She gestured toward the screen. My family built their empire on opaque supply chains and commodity speculation, the very logistics my code is designed to dismantle. Their foundation is a tax shelter used to whitewash decades of corporate profiteering and price fixing. The $40,000 they gifted me for tuition was a last-ditch effort to keep me compliant, to keep me silent, and to keep me off the streets after I refused to sign their non-disclosure agreement and inheritance trust. I took that single grant, paid my tuition, and severed all ties, Camilla continued, her voice rising with righteous fervor. I have paid back over half of that loan by working 3 jobs. The last $10 I gave Mr. West was purely earned, and purely mine. I live on $12 an hour because I refused to profit from a system I believe is broken. Nexus is my penance, my solution, and my life's work. A refusal to be another cog in the machine that my own blood helped build. The room was silent again, but this time the silence was complex, shifting from contempt to sudden, grudging respect. Authenticity was not about poverty, it was about choice and ethics. Camilla had willingly chosen destitution over complicity. Brody West stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Camilla. And this brings us to the true purpose of my test, gentlemen. I wasn't testing her financial state. I was testing her moral calculus. He addressed the Accord. The Drake Family Foundation is currently a major client of Westcorp Global. We manage their offshore trusts. I know the full history. Camilla Drake is right. She ran from the easy path. She is the most financially vulnerable person in this room, yet she is also the most ideologically secure. She is the antithesis of the system you all represent. Brody then delivered the final, shocking twist, leveling his gaze at the room. My family, too, was involved in the old system. My father and Elias Drake were partners, and they oversaw the most damaging ethical compromises of their generation. I built Westcorp Global to clean up the sins of my own past. Project Chimera is my way of atoning, by investing in genuine disruptive purity. I didn't just need a waitress with integrity. I needed Camilla Drake, the woman who understands the core rot of inherited wealth and has the genius to fix the logistical problems my father helped create. The true secret is, Camilla Drake is the only person I trust with the Accord's $100 million. The revelation of Brody West's own corporate guilt, tied directly to Camilla's estranged family, stunned the Accord. The tension was no longer about Camilla's past. It was about Brody's future, and the 50 people he was forcing to participate in his atonement. "I propose an immediate vote," Brody announced, cutting through the shock. "$100 million investment into Nexus at a non-dilutive valuation, with Camilla Drake as founder and CEO. She doesn't sell her soul for your money. She uses your money to achieve the mission of zero waste." Vernon Hale stood up, his face purple with fury. "This is a hostile maneuver, Brody. You are trying to use this woman and this money to absolve yourself of your own inherited guilt. I vote no." "Duly noted, Vernon. You have one vote," Brody said calmly. He turned to the others. "All those in favor of fully funding Nexus and Camilla Drake." Margot Brooks's hand shot up instantly, a pillar of quiet support. A wave of hands followed, some driven by calculated self-interest, others by genuine shock at Brody's vulnerability, and a few, like Margot, recognizing the unique, explosive combination of Camilla's integrity and intellect. The vote was a decisive, if not unanimous, victory. 38 hands raised in favor. Nexus had its funding. A contract, drafted by WestCorp's top legal team, was presented instantly. It outlined the terms: $100 million in tranches over 5 years, contingent on meeting key performance indicators, KPIs, focused entirely on global waste reduction, not profit margins. Camilla Drake retained 75% equity, and the Altruism Accord took a non-voting, non-controlling 25% stake. The terms were impossibly generous, designed by Brody to safeguard Camilla's autonomy. As Camilla sat down, heart still hammering, to review the complex documents, Naomi Chen approached the table, her smile sharp and predatory. "Congratulations, Ms. Drake. You played the sympathy card well," Naomi purred. "But I have concerns. A decentralized ledger for food logistics is fascinating, but what about the data privacy of the users, the food banks, the charities, the individual recipients? If WestCorp has access to the full Nexus data feed, what prevents them from creating a proprietary, for-profit version once you've proven the concept?" It was a brilliant, calculated strike, designed to undermine the trust of the entire Accord, suggesting that Brody West was using charity as a smokescreen for corporate espionage. The murmuring started again. Brody stiffened, but Camilla was faster. She had anticipated this. "The privacy of those we serve is non-negotiable, Ms. Chen," Camilla said, finally opening her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. "The solution is already coded into the Nexus Core protocol. The decentralized ledger uses a zero-knowledge proof architecture." She projected a simple, clean interface onto the screen. "The Accord receives only the aggregated data confirming impact and resource transfer validation. WestCorp Global receives only the cryptographic proofs necessary for financial audit. And I, as CEO, receive only the operational data needed for route optimization. No single entity, not even Brody West, has access to the raw data identifying individual locations or recipients. The data is secured by the network itself." She paused, then looked directly at Naomi. "Nexus is built not just on the ethics of efficiency, but on the ethics of data stewardship. The money is yours, but the mission is mine." Naomi Chen, defeated by the technical brilliance of the solution, simply nodded, the victory fading from her eyes. The agreement was signed. Camilla Drake, 24 hours after giving away her last $10, had secured $100 million and retained control of her revolutionary tech. Later that evening, in Brody West's private office, Gavin Cross was staring out at the city lights with a weary expression. "It worked, Brody. You pulled off the greatest hostile philanthropic takeover in history," Gavin said, swirling the ice in his glass. "But the price was heavy. You exposed the West Drake family history. Vernon Hale is already leveraging that information to destabilize the board, and you sacrificed your own integrity narrative to protect hers." Brody was sitting alone in the dark, the lights of Manhattan reflecting in his glacial blue eyes. I never cared about the narrative, Gavin. Only the solution. The truth is, I do need atonement. My father's greed nearly destroyed me, just like Elias Drake's greed nearly destroyed Camilla. We are both products of that broken system. He revealed the final quiet twist. And the thermal decay flaw that Hale mentioned? It was real. I had Gavin's team discreetly test her public code. When I lied and said she had the solution, I was forcing her to come up with one under pressure. Her hyper-local processing solution was brilliant. It was the only way to test her true coding resourcefulness, not just her preparation. Brody stood, walking to the edge of the window. The $10 was the test of her heart. The altruism accord meeting was the test of her mind. She passed both, brilliantly. The burden is now mine, protecting Nexus and Camilla from the wolves she just outsmarted. So, what now? Gavin asked. Now she works. We give her a team, an office, and unlimited resources. She is no longer the project. She is the CEO, and tomorrow the world starts changing. Brody turned, a look of profound, exhausted relief on his face. I need you to tell Margot Brooks that I need her on the Nexus board. She is the only one who can navigate the ethical waters of this accord. 6 months later, the transformation was absolute. Camilla Drake was unrecognizable. She occupied a bright, spacious corner office 2 floors below Brody West. She wore tailored clothes, not to fit in, but because they reflected the sharp, efficient mind beneath. Her life was still defined by relentless hours, but now the energy was focused on creation, not survival. Nexus was a staggering success. It had been deployed in 3 major metropolitan areas and 7 developing nations. The decentralized ledger had verified the transfer of over 50 million pounds of surplus food, reaching 1.2 million people. The press hailed Camilla as a revolutionary blend of tech genius and ethical leadership. The $10 investment was now worth hundreds of millions in social and economic capital. She was the CEO, running her company with the same integrity she showed that rainy night, constantly pushing back against the Accord's periodic attempts to monetize her data or dilute her mission. Margot Brooks, as a board member, was her steadfast ethical compass. Her relationship with Brody West, however, remained complex. It was a partnership of profound respect, intellectual rivalry, and a shared, unspoken burden, the legacy of the Drakes and the Wests. One evening, after a grueling press event, Camilla found herself walking past the empty, darkened boardroom. Brody West was there, alone, staring at the granite table where she had nearly cracked. "You won, Camilla," he said without turning around. "You beat them. You beat the system and you beat me." "I didn't beat you, Brody. You set me up to win," she replied, stepping into the room. "Why did you take that risk? The risk of exposing yourself, of having Vernon Hale lead a revolt against you?" Brody finally turned. He looked older, more burdened, despite the success. "Because I recognized the hunger, Camilla. Not the hunger for food, but the hunger for meaning. When I was stripped of my digital identity in that restaurant, I felt the raw panic of being irrelevant. You, with your last $10, were the only person who treated me like a human being, not a commodity. That kind of purity is the most disruptive force in the world. I needed to invest in it to save myself." He walked toward her, stopping a respectful distance away. "You took the $100 million, and you didn't become one of them. You didn't buy the car service. You took the subway. You didn't buy the trust fund. You built your own legacy. You proved that integrity is a scalable resource." Camilla finally confessed her own private terror from that day. "When Naomi Chen exposed my family, I was terrified. Not of losing the money, but of losing the mission. You saved me with a calculated lie about the code flaw. Why? Because that day I chose a side," Brody said simply. "My side is the disruptor, the builder, the one who cleans up the waste. You are my greatest success, Camilla. Not as a project, but as a proof of concept for the whole accord. You are the embodiment of resilience and authenticity." Camilla smiled, a genuine, powerful smile born of hard-won victory. "I'm still driving the mission, but if you ever lose your wallet again, you can still call me. I owe you a 20 plus interest." Brody West chuckled, a rare, genuine sound. It wasn't the sound of the corporate god. It was the sound of the man who had been saved by a $10 loan. The next day, Camilla Drake, now the celebrated CEO of a global humanitarian tech company, stood on the rooftop of WAITRESS Plaza. She looked down at the sprawling, chaotic beauty of the city, no longer intimidated by its scale. Below her, thousands of people were going about their lives, unaware that a quiet act of kindness had set in motion a movement that was now feeding them, not with charity, but with efficiency. Her life had changed, not because of the money, but because she had bet on her own humanity, and that gamble paid out, changing the world one discarded apple and one timely delivery at a time. The waitress was gone. The visionary remained. What an incredible journey. From walking 5 miles home in the pouring rain with 50 cents in her pocket, Camilla Drake's single act of generosity transformed her life forever. She didn't just get rich. She exposed the hidden ethical conflicts of the ultra-wealthy, leveraged a $100 million fund to secure her vision, and proved that authenticity and integrity are the ultimate disruptive technologies. Brody West's cynical test became her ultimate triumph, showing that you can run from inherited money, but you cannot run from your own genius. If this epic tale of resilience, corporate drama, and unexpected twists left you inspired, hit that like button right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their smallest acts of kindness can be their biggest investments. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into real-life drama fiction. Let us know in the comments below. What would you have done with your last $10?